So this is going to be a quick video, but it's an essential one. What we're going to do here is set up our Windows basic install and sysprep it. Now, sysprepping it is basically converting it to an image that can be cloned or copied to a new virtual machine, in this case, running on Virtualbox or whatever virtual platform you're using, because this process will be the same for all of them. And what this would allow you to do is sysprep the system, which puts it in a state that when it comes back on, it's being as if it's just been turned on for the first time. It's resetting everything, but it'll keep any kind of additional software, drivers, and other tools or utilities or configs that you want to install on the system. The beauty of that is if you needed two Windows systems in your home lab to talk to each other or not talk to each other or just do some work, and you need them on at the same time, this is a great way to do it. As opposed to taking 45 minutes to an hour to install a new Windows system from an ISO image, you just clone this setup and turn it on. It'll have all the latest updates. It'll have your drivers for Virtualbox or Workstation or whatever you're using, and you can just start using it within minutes. You will have to do the initial config, and there are some advanced setups that you can do with unattended files to configure it even further, but we're not going to get into it into this video. For this, it's just going to be doing the basic setup. So here we go. So the first thing you're going to need to do is create a shortcut for sysprep on the desktop. That just makes it easier to get to as opposed to having to drill all the way down into the Systems 32 folder in Windows. So we're going to do that. C drive, Windows, System 32, and then look for the sysprep directory. And you could just right click and drag and create a shortcut here. After doing that, close it. We're just going to open it here, give you a quick explanation of how it works. Very simple tool. There's not much to it. You have the system out-of-box experience, which you would enter on the next reboot, or you have system audit mode. Now, systems out-of-box experience is, as most of you I'm sure are familiar with Windows, when you first turn on your laptop or PC or desktop, and you get all those welcome settings and type in your name here and, turn on and off options and everything like that. So that initial setup, it's going to reset this system to that. The other thing you want to do is make sure you click the generalize checkbox. Now that's important because what that does is remove any kind of unique identifiers that would make this system, when you sysprep it and clone it, that clone would have those same unique identifiers as this original system if you do not click this. Clicking this changes all of that and generalizes those settings so that when it comes back up, it randomly creates new unique identifiers, which is what you want. So that if you're running them, two of them at a time on the same system on a possible Active Directory domain, which I'll talk about in another video, you definitely want them to have different unique identifiers. So we'll keep this checked. The other options is to quit, reboot, or shut down. Quit would allow you to continue working, which is more for the audit mode, which I'll go into in a second, and reboot and shutdown should be self-explanatory. So after the sysprep is done, it would either reboot, shut down, or just quit and you can continue working. System audit mode is where when it reboots, it will bypass all that welcome screen and everything else, and you could go in and install all the updates, the drivers, the tools, whatever applications you want. And if you need to reboot again, you can do that. If you need multiple reboots as you're continuing to do those installs and setups, it will do that and it will track those changes. And then when you're finally ready to sysprep it, you can sysprep it and shut it down. So that is, for example, if you just got a new laptop and you wanted to be able to jump in, turn it on, and do sysprep before anything else, you can do system audit mode. On the reboot, before it does that welcome screen, it will go into this Windows desktop just like this, and you can do whatever changes you need. For the case of this video and for what we're using this for, which would be cloning it in a home lab, this is not useful for us. So we are going to be doing this. And we would be choosing the OOBE, out of box experience, and shutting down. But for now, we're going to cancel out. The next step now is to check and make sure we update the system to the latest patches. So that's going into settings, update, Windows update. Now I've already checked and updated this, but we'll do it again just to make sure. And in your case, if you have any updates, you go ahead and update that system. Get it to the latest update so that all your clones will also be to the latest updates as of that date that you do it. We are up to date, so we can exit this. You can also check and make sure there are no drivers that need to be kind of fixed, set up, or missing. So we are going to go into Device Manager. So we go into the search bar, type Device Manager, and click on it to start it up. And you can see here, there are no drivers or devices with exclamation points. Everything looks good. So we are good there. The final step is to install any additional tools or applications or things that you would like on all your images as you clone them. For example, Google Chrome would be a great example, or Firefox, or Putty, or Visual Studio Code, whatever it might be. You want to install those tools now so they can also be there and you don't have to repeat that process on each clone that you do. That's a matter of personal taste, and what should be used is beyond the scope of this video. But I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I will be right back. Okay, so I'm back. Install some of the tools that I commonly use in Windows: Putty, Notepad, WinSCP, Adobe Reader, etc. Although the apps didn't ask for it, based on what we're doing, I'm just going to play it safe and go through and do a reboot anyway. So do that now. And system's coming back up. This will pretty much be the final step here. We'll log in. We'll go ahead and run that sysprep tool. All right, so the final step is just running sysprep and playing the options before. So we are going to pick out of box experience, generalize, and shut down. So this sysprep takes a while to run. Don't cancel out or don't exit it because it might leave your system in an inconsistent state. Just let it run. Go get some coffee, take a break. And what it's going to do right now is it's going to run through this, do the generalization of the system, prepare it for the out-of-box experience, that first power-up experience. And when that happens, after it's done with that, it will shut down. At that point, whatever virtualization platform you're using, whether it be VirtualBox or VMware Workstation, you can now keep that image or that virtual machine off, and you can now use that and clone that to other systems. In more complex virtualization platforms like Proxmox or Virt Manager on Linux, you can actually use it as a linked clone, where you have clones that don't have to copy that entire disk image. They will read from that disk image and write changes to their own individual image. You let this run through, shut it down, and then you're done. You have it. So I decided, you know what? Might as well add and walk through the startup just so everyone can see how it works once you clone the system. So this is after the sysprep. It ran through, as I mentioned, and automatically shut down. Now I'm going to start it up and we will go in. Now this will take longer than the past boot because it's basically the same as an initial setup right now. Doing an initial setup of drivers, devices, services, etc. And as you can see, even though I'm pausing, this takes quite a while for that first boot, but that's expected. And we're still loading up. As you can see, it's taking a while. And a lot of this time in terms of setup and loading with Windows and patching taking 30, 40 minutes is one of the main reasons why I defected to the Linux team and I run Linux as my primary desktop. And we'll get into that in another video, but definitely something you'd want to consider. And we're here, so I'll go through this as quickly as possible just so we can see how it's set up. But as you can see, it's basically an initial power on and setup. Now, sometimes when you buy laptops or PCs from Dell or HP or others, it's kind of a different setup. It's because they modify it for their devices. But when you're just kind of doing Windows by itself, this is what you get. Some more setup. Okay, and now we continue going through the setup, up the license agreement. I do like the fact that Microsoft finally allows you to run Windows 10. And I'm assuming 11, I haven't tried it yet, without activation. That kind of makes it, even though they limit personalization, you can't change desktop wallpaper, things like that. That doesn't really matter. The main thing is that you can still use it in a test environment, which will be the point of a lot of these video series that I'll be putting out. So this is great. We are going to skip this part. Click on domain, join instead. And this is where it'll allow you to create an initial account. Now, the account that we were using before on my system, it might be different on yours, but on mine it was IFOIT-admin1. That account will still be there on the system. This account will also be created, so I will call it user 1. And unfortunately, I have not found a way to get around this or skip this and just use that account, but I'll show you. If I type in to use that account, it won't allow me to do it because that account is already on the system. Please type a different username. So that is where this comes in. So I'll just call it user 1. It'll be created as an administrator, but you can always go into Windows and change it to a regular user if you want to use it for additional testing, whatever. And of course, you can call the accounts whatever you want. Super memorable password. Password 123. And I just pick anything here. Yes. A hint. This system is going to be scrubbed anyway. And since this is a test system, I just turn all these services off. Your mileage may vary. Skip this Cortana. While this is booting up, I do want to mention one thing. Not sure if I mentioned it already. The system that you clone from, when you bring it back, if you boot that system back up, it will go through this same process because it's the original. But you can, as of, I believe, Windows 8, they now allow you to re-sysprep a system 1,000 times. Whereas with earlier versions of Windows, it was only 3 times. So technically, you can always bring up that original, turn it on, go through this process, install new tools, remove other tools, do your latest Windows patching, and re-sysprep it with the exact same process and shut it down and continue cloning and using it. So that's a great way to continue using this cloning methodology that you need in your home lab while keeping your original gold images, let's call them that, up to date. We're almost there. And there we are. And as you can see, all the tools I installed are still there. And it's as if it was turned, except it was as if it was turned on for the first time, went through all that. But I have all these apps. We can go through and do a Windows update. And since this is in Patch Tuesday, this should be up to date. I have the network access there. I'm using a custom, since this is a guest machine running on Linux, it's using the custom Virtualbox driver, which I'll get into in another video. And you're up to date. And there you have it. That's the way you will, the best way to be able to quickly clone Windows systems, although it doesn't seem that quick. I just a disclaimer, I was running this clone on a regular hard drive and not an SSD, so that also is why it took a bit more time than it should. But this is truly the best way to be able to quickly clone Windows systems and spin them up, turn them down, and almost essentially make them disposable. Mess around with them, do what you want, test them, and shut them down and delete them, and clone another one. All right, and there you have it. Take care, and see you on the next one.